Hello and welcome back. In this tutorial I'm going to show you some techniques that you can use to transform your images into an old looking movie poster or an old looking movie effect. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started. The first thing that you want to do is select your image. I've selected this image from a free stock photography website, and you want to go ahead and open that up in Adobe Photoshop. Next thing that you want to do, and the thing that I always do, is I make a copy of this background layer so that I have a non-destructive original copy that I can go back to in case I destroy something in working on the image that I need to start over. So what I want to do is I can press Control with the layer selected. I can press Control J on the keyboard to make a copy of that layer, or you could just simply click and drag that layer down into the New Layer button in the Layers panel. And I'm going to go ahead and just make that background layer invisible, since we're not going to touch that until, well, hopefully ever, unless we make a mistake. The next thing that I want to do, and this entire technique is going to be non-destructive, and it's going to be done by adding adjustment layers. So what I want to do is I want to select that layer 1, and I want to add an adjustment layer. So I want to add a hue and saturation adjustment layer to this, okay? And I want to set my saturation to a negative 76, and that's just going to start to take away a little bit of the color and start to give us a little bit of that old look, or just a cinematic look, I guess, in general. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is go ahead and add another adjustment layer. So we'll go down here again and we'll click on our adjustment layer button, and I want to add an exposure adjustment layer. Okay, and I want to, I kind of just want to play around with these settings because it's going to be different for each image, okay? But so what you want to do is try to make it look similar to mine when you're done. So there's a few different defaults that you can select from. I'm going to select the -1 to make it a little bit darker, and then I'm going to go ahead and play with these other settings. You can see kind of what they do, okay? So I'm going to take the offset and I'm going to go a little bit to the left with it, and then I want to take the gamma correction and I want to go, I think, slightly to the right with it. Okay, and now that's a little bit dark, so maybe what I want to do is I want to go the other way with the exposure, actually. And I know I told you I was going to use one of those presets, but I think I'm not going to. I think I'm going to set it close to 0, or maybe just actually go slightly up a little bit to 0.17 here. Okay, and I might just do these a little bit more, the offset, and that's going to kind of increase my highlights and lowlights in the image. You could also do this with a curves adjustment layer, but I've noticed for this effect that this can be a little bit more dramatic. Okay, so now that we've gotten the image looking kind of like this, and hopefully you're at the same point after playing around with these settings, what we want to do is go ahead and make a copy of, actually make another copy of this layer. So what we can do is we can click and drag it down into our New Layer button, or like I said earlier, or we can press Control J once again on our keyboard. The reason that I did that is because in order to make this next step non-destructive, we need to work on a new copied layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Filter, down to Blur, and then down to Lens Blur, and click on it. Sometimes this takes a little while for my machine to pull this filter up, so please bear with me while it's thinking. Okay, that wasn't too bad. The next thing that we want to do is we want to set our settings in here. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and tell you to just do it exactly the same way that I have them. So I'll just go down the list here. I have Preview selected so I can see the changes that I'm making. I have More Accurate radio button selected here. The source should be set to none. Blur focal distance is not even able to be clicked or invert. So this iris shape is set to hexagon 6. Set your radius down here to 9. Blade curvature to 14. The rotation to 58, and then under specular highlights, set your brightness to 7, threshold to 213, and for noise, you could add noise here if you wanted to. As you can see, that's going to be what it does, and then you can change the noise setting from uniform to Gaussian or whatever you want to do. Okay, but I'm not going to add noise here. I'm actually going to do that in a later step. So why don't you go ahead and stick with me and do that later as well. So I'm going to go ahead now with those settings, and I'm going to click OK. And that's going to apply my blur there. What I need to do now is make a layer mask on that copied layer. So I go down to my layer mask button and I'll click that, and with my layer mask selected, I want to go over to my tools palette and select my eraser. I've already got my brush size set to a pretty large setting. 400 or 442 is exactly what I have mine set to, but click to yours to whatever you feel comfortable with, but it should be large. And go up to the top and click that drop down arrow under your brush settings and change the hardness to 0 so that when we do erase here, it's not going to leave any hard edges, okay? And what you want to do is select the focal point of your image and then just go ahead and click on it so that it erases that. And as you can see, I have my black color in the foreground here. That's actually not allowing me to erase. So what I'll need to do is click on my default colors here so that my white is in the foreground, and then I should be able to erase. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to click that a couple times to make that come into focus. You can still see that his shoulders are still a little out of focus, and the rest of the image is still pretty out of focus, okay? So the next thing that we want to do is I'm going to add a new layer and up at the very top, okay? So I'm going to click my new layer button and I'm going to drag that up to the top, and I'm going to fill that in with a black color. So my black somehow got back up to the top. I don't remember doing that, but I'm sure I did. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my paint bucket tool and I'm going to fill in that layer with black, okay? And then what I want to do is over on my layers panel, I'm going to set that the opacity of that layer to 70%. Okay, so it's going to look like that. After that, go ahead and go back over to your eraser and with the same settings. And actually, since we're making this completely non-destructive, what we want to do is we want to add a mask to that layer, okay? And select that mask. Then go ahead and just click around the center of the image so that just kind of the corners and the edges are going to be this dark black color, okay? And I'm just going to do that real quick. So you're always focusing on this main part of your image, okay? Okay, so now that we've gotten that, the next thing that I want to do is add some noise to this to give it kind of a grainy look, okay? So I'm actually going to add another new layer, and I'm going to actually also fill that in with black. So with my black as my foreground color, I'm going to select my paint bucket tool from my tool palette, and I'm going to fill that layer in with black. I'm going to go up to filter at the top, down to noise, and add noise, okay? And you can add as much noise as you want. I'm going to add a little bit less than this, I think, maybe around 10% here. And I want to do a uniform and monochromatic for my settings there, and I'll click OK. And then after you do that, make sure that layer is still selected. Go up to your blending modes and change that to screen, just so that you can only see the noise there. And I'm not sure if you can see it very well. I'll zoom in here real quick. You can see the noise in the image. It just kind of adds extra pixels of noise to the image. Sorry for the zooming in and out there. I hope that didn't make you sick. Okay. Now we're essentially done with this. We could be done with this right now. This could be like an old-timey movie poster right here. You could add some text if you wanted to. Or one thing that I like to do sometimes just for fun, and if you want to make it look like it's actually like a scene in a movie or a film in a movie, is you take your marquee tool from your tool palette. Actually, let me redo that since I started working before I was explaining. So select your rectangle marquee tool from your toolbar and just make a selection on your image. Just click and drag a selection and make sure that the space on the top and on the bottom is equal. Okay, and then you just let go. You just release. And then what you want to do is you want to go up to select and select the inverse. There it is. Or you can press Shift Control I, okay? So now just the top and the bottom areas are selected. And what we want to do is make one more new layer. And we're going to go up to Edit, down to Fill, and we're going to keep our foreground color selected under the contents use here because our foreground color is black, and that's what we want to add there. And so what we'll do is we'll select OK, and that'll add that those black areas to the image and give you that kind of widescreen film look. Okay, and now we're really done. So like I said, this last layer is optional, obviously, and if you wanted to do this last layer, I would suggest going back and redoing that effect too to fit in this area so that you would have a black edge in there. Okay, so here's our final effect. We have an old looking movie effect, or just kind of a cinematic effect overall. Some newer movies look like this too, is why I say that. Okay, so I hope you learned a lot from this tutorial. Let me just show you where I started from with this image, and this is where I ended with this image. Okay, so please find me on Facebook and Twitter, and if you liked this tutorial, please click the like button on YouTube. It really helps me out, and thanks for watching.